If you really want to understand the man we know as Malcolm X, the revolutionary, the icon, you can't just start with the fiery speeches or the headlines. No, you've got to go all the way back to the beginning, to the brutal fire of his childhood that forged the man he would become.
Now, that wasn't some prediction he made when he was famous. That was a fundamental truth he learned as a boy. You see, for him, violence wasn't some abstract idea. It was the very air his family breathed, a constant, looming presence that would shape his entire view of America and the world.
And at the absolute center of that world was his father, the Reverend Earl Little. Now, this was a 6'4", one-eyed Baptist minister who, as Malcolm himself put it, was not a frightened Negro. His father's refusal to bow down, his absolute defiance, set their entire family on a collision course with white supremacy.
And this was the philosophy that Reverend Little lived and breathed. It wasn't just about faith on a Sunday. It was a radical vision of Black independence, a Black self-respect. It was a call to reject the American nightmare and build a new future in Africa. And let me tell you, that message of empowerment was seen as one thing, a threat, a dangerous one.
As a little boy, Malcolm would go with his father to these secret Garvey meetings, and instead of the usual church hymns, he was hearing this powerful chant. Think about that. That's a lesson in pride, a declaration of Black potential in a country that was doing everything it could to tell them they had none. But for every single message of pride, there was a violent pushback. The family was terrorized, and I mean relentlessly. In Omaha, you had Klansmen on horseback, shattering their windows in the middle of the night. Then, in Lansing, Michigan, a hate group called the Black Legion burned their home completely to the ground. And the worst part? Police and firemen just stood there. They watched it burn. This wasn't random. It was a targeted campaign of terror. All that pressure from the outside, well, it was about to spark a total collapse on the inside. The very forces that were attacking the little family were about to tear them apart, piece by devastating piece. The speed of this collapse is just staggering. I mean, look at this. In just 8 years, this proud, defiant family goes from being independent to being utterly destroyed. First, the house is burnt down. Then his father is murdered, his skull crushed, his body nearly severed by a streetcar. The official report called it an accident. The family never, not for 1 second, believed that lie. After her husband was murdered, Louisa Little, a proud woman, just 34 years old, was left completely alone to provide for her children. 8 of them. 8 kids. The rock of the family was gone, and the weight of the world was just beginning to crash down. With no income, they had no choice but to go on state welfare. And right along with those welfare agents came a whole new kind of violence, dehumanization. Malcolm remembered so clearly how they were looked at, not as a family in pain, but as a case file, as objects, as things. You see, the state's help came with a very heavy price. Their freedom. The agents were always meddling, questioning the kids behind their mother's back, chipping away at her authority, her dignity. That lifeline they were offered, it became a chain, stripping the family of the very pride their father had died for. And imagine this. This simple phrase, stamped on all their welfare food, was a constant daily humiliation. Every meal they ate was a brand of shame. It was a symbol of where they were, a mark that set them apart and reminded them of their dependence. So for Malcolm, looking back, the system didn't just fail his family, it actively dismantled it. Under that immense pressure of poverty, the constant harassment, and the state's intrusion, his mother had a complete mental breakdown. She was committed. And that was his final damning verdict. With his family completely shattered and his mother gone, young Malcolm Little became a ward of the court. His formal schooling might have been in a classroom, but let me tell you, his real education happened in the wreckage of his life. That's what he called it. A white judge now had total control over his life and the lives of his brothers and sisters. For Malcolm, it was just another kind of ownership, another system built from the ground up to control Black lives. But even in all this chaos, you could start to see this sharp, analytical mind being built. When he'd go rabbit hunting with the older men, he'd watch their strategy. It was simple. They knew a rabbit runs in a big circle, so they'd just wait. They'd just stand there and wait for it to come back. It was passive, it was predictable. But Malcolm, he wasn't going to just wait. He analyzed the system, he understood the rabbit's path, and then he moved ahead and cut it off. He didn't play by their rules. He outthought the game itself.
Pretty soon, he was bringing home 3 or 4 rabbits before the old men even got a shot off.
And that right there, that's the lesson he took away from it all. Don't just accept the game as it's being played. Analyze it, figure out how it works, and then find a better way to win. It was a lesson in strategy he would use on much, much bigger systems later in his life.
And his education didn't stop with hunting. He learned other hard lessons out on the streets. Hunger taught him that if you really want something, you better make some noise. Getting cheated out of a dollar taught him that someone who wins all the time isn't lucky, they're cheating. And soon, he started to see the whole world through that lens. The game was rigged. And through it all, he learned that your pride, that's the last and most important thing you have to hold on to.
So how do you connect this broken kid to the fiery orator who shook the world? It's simple. Every single piece of his adult worldview, his deep distrust of white systems, his fierce belief in self-reliance, his absolute refusal to be passive, it was all forged right there, in the trauma of his youth.
26. That's how many years his mother, Louise Little, spent locked away in that state mental hospital. Just let that sink in, a 26-year reminder of everything that was stolen from him and of who did the stealing. This is the end result. This chilling declaration is the ultimate takeaway. It's the direct product of a childhood spent watching his father murdered, his home burned to the ground, and his mother systematically destroyed by a society that offered help with one hand and delivered absolute ruin with the other.
This was the crucible, and it created a man who refused, absolutely refused, to be just another victim of history. It forged a mind that analyzed every system, that challenged every single rule, and that fought back against that crushing weight of injustice. Which leaves us with one fundamental question to think about.